And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined on this special pre-vacation episode. I had already taped the player review, just kind of throw in episodes while I was on vacation. And then the guest that I have today is somebody who I really enjoy talking to. Ethan, you wrote a piece for your Substack, House of Strauss, that caught my attention. It was getting sent to me. I'm not kidding. At least 4 people that I speak to all throughout the league and all that stuff sent me your article. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? It was a big piece of conversation everywhere. But you wrote about the dynamic between Dan Hurley and Adrian Wojnarowski and the Lakers and UConn. And I was like, you know what? Screw the plan to throw in the player review things. I got to talk to this guy. I reached out to you and you were really, really kind and kind enough to hop on here on very short notice. So I greatly appreciate it. How you holding up?
I'm holding up great. It's funny you mentioned that you were sent this article 4 different times from people, because it's a funny thing. I put it behind the paywall. I've got a newsletter. It's how I make my money. My apologies to people who want it for free. But if you notice, my article is not viral, right? I think there were some people, Jason Timpf put it out there. He's got a following, but it is not viral overtly. And you certainly don't see it shared by people at these different media shops, these other reporters of the main shops. And there's a reason for that. And we'll get into it, but it has done very good numbers for me behind the scenes. So something is just interesting in that, Anthony, this whole idea that something is being shared secretly and people are subscribing to it secretly, but at least in NBA media, you just don't want to talk about Woj. You can't talk about him. It's not, you don't want to talk about him. We can't talk about how funny it is today that Redick is now the guy again. We can't talk about it. It's not allowed.
Yeah, I've noticed that in my time doing this. I've always, if I have something to say, generally speaking, sometimes to my detriment, I'll just let her rip. And if something doesn't quite add up to me, if something smells fishy, I'm just going to say the thing smells fishy. And so while, when Adrian Wojnarowski on, I think it was like the morning of game 1 of the finals, randomly goes, Dan Hurley is being interviewed. There's a lot of momentum that this could gain over the course of the weekend and that he might be the next coach of the Lakers. And there was nobody else that has ever been in the running for Dan Hurley, that Hurley has been their target all along. And I just said, I just asked the question, if that's the case, why are they just now meeting with the guy a month after Darvin Ham was fired? That was weird to me. That was like, it didn't add up. And I said it on the show, I tweeted it out, and I got all kinds of, and here's part of the reason that people don't like kind of refuting Woj publicly, is because what Woj says is the word of God. And so if Woj says something and I say, this doesn't add up, my mentions were a tire fire for a week, basically, for merely asking the question, this doesn't quite make sense. And then we come to find out. So we see how everything plays out with Dan Hurley, and we'll get to more of that. And your timeline here is a really interesting one, and we'll talk about that as well. And then we arrive here today where now Shams is saying JJ Redick has always been the guy, and it's always been between him and Borrego, seeming to throw shade at Adrian Wojnarowski. And here again, I'll say that doesn't add up, because the Lakers literally made Dan Hurley an offer. It was a somewhat lowball offer. It was below what he was expecting, but they made him an offer nonetheless. So in both of these cases, you have both of these, intel, religious figures in NBA circles who are both trying to say that the other person's reporting is completely, it can be completely refuted. And I'm just here to say it isn't. And I want to get into your timeline here, where I think a really interesting thing that you threw in there that I hadn't even thought of was Gino Auriemma's extension. and how that
Mm.
might have affected Dan Hurley's extension. So just really quickly, I don't want to give up the entire piece because I really hope people check it out. It's great, it's thorough, and it's an entertaining read in and of itself, as you tend to be. But like the timeline here from Hurley's side of this and your entire kind of like from your perspective, how have you kind of read this situation?
I mean, I appreciate you not wanting to give away everything in the story, but I couldn't even do it in the setting if I tried. It is convoluted. It is a crazy Coen Brothers movie where people have their schemes and everything happens and it all leads to nothing. It's the end of Burn After Reading, where the guy played by J.K. Simmons at the CIA is going, "What did we just do? What did we learn? I don't know. I just know that we shouldn't do it again." I think the story, in a way, obviously the story starts with Ham getting fired, but the propulsion, the action as I see it, it's June 4th, the announcement of Gino Auriemma getting his lavish 5-year extension at UConn on the same day as Shams reporting that the Lakers are zeroing in on Redick. These are two events on the same day on different coasts, seemingly completely unconnected, and it starts a collision course where Shams reporting that is bad from Woj's perspective. We might just look at it as, okay, that's, Shams got a story right there. He got a news break on Redick. That's not the way Woj sees it. Woj sees it as, this is my teammate at ESPN, and we're both CAA, which is a big deal. To be in creative artist agency. That's my story. If Redick's going to go anywhere, that's mine. Okay. So you've got that happen right there. The Gino Auriemma contract is interesting because if you recall, Dan Hurley, he wins the championship, consecutive championship, and Kentucky comes a knocking with a big deal to come coach Kentucky. And in the afterglow of victory, Dan Hurley's going, nah, I want to be here. I want to go for another championship. And the assumption is that UConn is going to take care of him. I mean, he just won 2 championships. And so Kentucky, let's let that ship sail. Well, now there's no more leverage because he didn't really get a deal done using Kentucky. And I'm sure UConn in these conversations is saying to him, look, we only got so much money, Dan. We only got so much money. And Gino Auriemma, the legendary women's college coach, I mean, that guy, he seems like he's very close to retirement age-wise. And what do you know? On June 4th, it's announced that he's got a 5-year extension, nearly $20 million. And it's, so you do have some money, UConn. You do. But now I don't have the same kind of leverage that I had before. And I'm kind of worried that you're going to not be able to pay me because it all comes out of the same coffers over there at UConn. UConn's not Texas football. They don't, they're in a weird thing. They don't have a bunch of football money, but they've got these 2 programs, men and women's, that are both highly successful. So he's in constant conversation and communication with Woj. We all know that. You can see it when Woj talks. You identified it, how you can see the book Woj wrote about his father right to the left of his ear in his home studio.
I noticed that. I hadn't read your piece yet. And I noticed that while he was talking there. And I'm like, that is some like serial killer stuff, wanting us to like link everything while it's going on. It was crazy.
Leaving us clues. He's leaving us clues. And so that's June 4th, those events, that kicks it off. Then the other interesting clue, I think, drops on June 5th, which is that Redick gets asked about this by the Golic and Wojo show. And he seems pissy about it, which doesn't really make sense. If you didn't want the job, then you would just say, hey, I don't want the job. That might be a report, but it's erroneous. I've decided I don't want it. If it's not true, then it's just not true. But if it's true, then why so pissy? Why do you care? And it gets at this other weird dynamic to it, which is not only is such a story to be owed to Woj in theory, if you are a good teammate, but Redick is on the broadcast at ESPN NBA. And from the outside, you might think that it's not a big deal if he leaves to take a Laker coaching job, that these things happen. I don't know. Call up somebody else. Let's get Richard Jefferson on the phone. He can fill in. That's not how they see it internally at ESPN. The way it's viewed internally, Dave Roberts runs ESPN NBA TV product. Egg was on his face because Doc Rivers wined and dined him, and they made a big deal of shaking up their announcing team, given the heave-ho to Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, and it was all going to be Doc Rivers for a new generation. Doc Rivers leaves in the middle of the season to coach the Bucks. Embarrassing. They didn't have a contract with Doc that prevented him from doing that. I'm sure they could have gotten one, and they didn't think to do it. So it's a bad look. And Dave Roberts is not a meek guy. He is aggressive and scares people. And I think if you're Doc, you might not care about that. You might go, "Oh, you're going to be mad at me over here at ESPN? Well, guess what? I coach the Bucks, and you guys don't care about the Bucks, so it doesn't really matter." But if you're JJ Redick and you're going to leave for this high-profile first coaching job, it's the Lakers. ESPN's going to talk about them. Do you really want the person who runs ESPN's NBA TV product to hate you and have an open vendetta?
They're going to talk about the
against
Lakers
you?
every day. Like,
Yes,
they already do. It's the finals, and they do.
And I'm not saying that Dave Roberts made that threat towards JJ and said that if you leave us high and dry before the finals, then we're going to exact revenge upon you. I'm not saying that. I don't know if such a threat was made. I just know that it's a sensitive situation from the perspective of Redick, and that might be why he is saying just ixnay on the whole thing and expressing that he's pissed off at Shams for reporting on it and breaking that omerta. But the problem with not formally seizing a job, even if it's been promised to you, which I think a lot of people believe that it was, and believe that Redick, if you talked around the league, that it was signed, sealed, delivered, that job's still not officially taken. And so it's a vacuum. It can be used as a tool for leverage, or for somebody saying, "Hey, there's no ink dry. Maybe I want that job. Maybe I can move things around to get it." So that leads to June 6th, first day of the NBA Finals. And the way this all went down, I think it's interesting. You know, when there's breaking news, a lot of the time it comes out at a weird time of day. The reporter breaking it has been up all night making phone calls.
They look all disheveled.
All disheveled.
Yeah.
Woj unleashes this the day of the NBA Finals at 6:50 a.m. on the East Coast, and then skips on over. Looks very shoveled, very as sharp as I've ever seen him. Nice blue suit, clean shave, at the New York studio. Odd to be at the New York studio, game one of the NBA Finals for the top
when they're being
NBA,
played in Boston.
When they're being played in Boston. I almost look at it as that tweet goes out. I can almost envision that first scene of The Dark Knight where you see the clown mask being held and then the car pulled, and it's just boom. Heist is on, boom.
Yeah.
And Woj is on there, on Get Up, doing the car wash, and it is a day of Dan Hurley is coming to LA. The Godfather offer is upon us. They desperately want him, and he is literally the most sought after coach in all of basketball. I'm not being hyperbolic, by the way, when I just put it that way and characterize it that way. That's what Woj said, that Dan Hurley literally, and he said literally, the most sought after coach in all of basketball. Okay. And then Dan Hurley's coming to LA for a meeting with Rob Pelinka. And that leads into the whole drama that we've seen where it was two NBA Finals games where this is wall-to-wall coverage of Dan Hurley. Oh my God. And I mean, we can just get into whatever you want to get into from there now that we're back at square one and it looks like it's going to be JJ Redick again. It's just absurd. It's a crazy situation. I've got my own theories on it, and I think it speaks to how Woj over there, it's not just hard scrabble reporter reporting the news as he hears it. There's an aspect of trying to make the news, and I mean that metaphorically, and I mean that literally.
Yeah, one of the things that again, and anytime somebody talks, like anytime you talk to anybody in the industry about Woj, it's like hushed silence. You look around the room to make sure everything, like nobody could possibly be listening, where he could, get this information back to him. But one of the like random whispers that I had heard at the beginning of the season is that he was kind of looking out at like the landscape, having conquered everything, right? Picture Thanos looking out after he snapped, right? And he's peaceful. And after that, you kind of look and there was some word that like he had conquered everything. And what was the next thing? And one thing that you have mentioned recently is like, and you just said it, the idea of like making the news and playing matchmaker and those things. And
Yes.
that felt like the next kind of step, the next conquered or unconquered land that he could maybe start to traverse, where he starts telling people who needs to be hired, and he wields that kind of power too. And the way that this all played out here with Hurley, because after Hurley basically decides to stay at UConn, Woj goes on with I'm blanking on his name, but he goes on Sports Center and Scott Van Pelt. He's talking to Scott Van Pelt, and like it looked like somebody just kicked his dog. It was
amazing. It's amazing.
And it's really, really rare to hear Woj editorialize from the subjects of the story. But he says here in that clip, by the way, while that is all going on, this was the image, right? Is him standing there, the miracle of St. Anthony,
looking dyspeptic, a far different Woj from the Seaport Village Woj.
Yeah,
on that game 1 of the finals, different Woj right there. Not
and he's
smiling.
saying like, Hurley might live to regret this, that, this type of opportunity might not come along again. And this might be something that down the line Hurley might regret. And that really stuck out to me. That is not something that you tend to hear after a story has played out. How did you take that moment?
He tried to get it done. That's how I interpret it. That's what you hear, because it doesn't even make sense. I mean, people, I feel like they see one layer of the scheme, but maybe not the second part of it. They see the layer of, well, this was done to help Woj's buddy get leverage in his contract negotiation with UConn. And yeah, I'm sure that was this huge part of the pitch of it, which is, hey, take a meeting. This will help you get the leverage with UConn.
It's a win-win
that you lost when you said goodbye to Kentucky. But there's this other aspect of it where it looks like Adrian really wanted this to actually happen. And it wasn't just a fugazi, and it wasn't just for the sake of leverage. And that's why he's mournful. And he was saying, as you said to Scott Van Pelt, I don't know if there won't be some regret down the line that he didn't make the leap now. And this is maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity in that job, in that market. I know you've got Laker fans on. I'm not trying to insult your team, but it has not been that for coaches after Phil Jackson. It has not been a golden ticket to anything. So what
Frank
are you
Vogel
even
won a
talking
championship?
about?
He was gone the next year or 2 years later.
It has not been that. So what are you even talking about? And more to the point, they offered him the 6th most money of an NBA coach to pluck him away from low tax Connecticut to leave his dream job. I mean, it doesn't make any kind of sense. It doesn't make sense at all that you would be talking about it that way. And that's one of the reasons why Woj is fascinating, is he's a very Machiavellian guy. He is a schemer, but he's also very human, and he almost can't control it, and he can't just keep it buttoned up and put the poker face on. I think you watch that and you realize, oh, he was trying to make this happen. He was trying to manifest it. And a lot of stuff goes down that way. I think it was trying to play power broker for a variety of reasons. And one of those reasons is it would also make Shams Charania look bad, and it would one up him. And that's a strong motivator for him.
Shams is enjoying his moment in the sun, ironically on ESPN airwaves. It's insane.
Amazing story.
He's on McAfee's show. McAfee saying that he is his NBA guy when ESPN has 2 NBA guys. It is Stephen A. Smith and it is Adrian Wojnarowski. Shams is neither of those people. It was just
Yes.
how did you take that next step? I'll try to find the clip and I'll play it because you kind of rushed onto the mic here. I'll grab it while you
Yeah.
talk. But how did you take that moment?
Well, that's this other interesting insight into the ESPN operation. And I'm still, as I look at this massive story where everything happened and nothing happened, I'm trying to figure out, why is the NBA like this? Why is ESPN like this? And I don't even have any big theories on it, but it's almost like what's happening is downstream of these institutions just having conflict and a lack of leadership and these power struggles within them. Because what you're seeing right there is an expression of the power struggle within ESPN, which is that Pat McAfee wants to do whatever the hell he wants to do. And he's young and he's got a YouTube audience, and ESPN wants that Barstool demographic, and they don't have an answer of how to get it beyond Pat McAfee. And so Pat McAfee has butted heads with them and said, you're not going to control me. I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers on. I'm going to have whoever I want on. And you can be damn sure that when he's had Shams on, that Woj had something to say about that and didn't like that. Woj hates when an enemy of his is, associated with on an ESPN platform. And knowing the way Pat McAfee's handled things, I believe that McAfee probably got pretty angry when that happened and did his typical defiant, you're not going to control me. So when you're watching Pat McAfee serve this up to Shams to have a big laugh at Woj and just be laughing uproariously about how Dan Hurley was never going to happen and how they never wanted Dan Hurley, you're looking at a power struggle, not just between McAfee and Woj, but between McAfee and a lot of the suits at ESPN. And that's part of what's happening right there. This is a bizarre story, man.
Here's the clip, just in case, for those who are curious. I'll play a bit of it. It's a 5-minute clip. I'm not going to play all of it, but I'll play a portion of it. And you'll notice Shams looks very shoveled. He always looks very shoveled, but
very much.
He's positively glowing here.
Massive breaking news this morning all across ESPN. JJ Redick is getting a formal interview with the Los Angeles Lakers this weekend. Feels like this was maybe inevitable in some parts of conversation, but is this real? Is this his first interview? And what are you hearing about JJ Redick potentially being the coach of the Lakers?
This is the second time that JJ Redick is meeting. He met with Rob Pelinka and the Lakers the week of May 13th at the draft combine in Chicago. They met for nearly 2 hours there, from what I was told. And then the Lakers met for over 2 hours with James Borrego in LA. So that's been the timeline. And then they met as well with James Borrego a couple weeks after that as well. Let's see if I get my date right. They met with James Borrego as well near the end of May. So 2 meetings for James Borrego in person. Obviously, JJ Redick has had a lot of interest from the Lakers throughout this process. I said on this program, Pat, if you remember, I actually said on your program on May 24th that JJ Redick is the favorite and that it is down to JJ Redick and James Borrego as the 2 finalists for the Lakers. And that has not changed. It didn't change. Nothing changed from that point. I reported on it as well in The Athletic last Tuesday. I believe that was June 4th. And really throughout the Lakers process, nothing has changed. They need to see.
Nothing has changed. Now look, like I said earlier, I don't believe that to be the case. Here's the timeline that I have based off of the conversations that I have compiled to this point, is that essentially the Lakers tabbed JJ Redick from the get-go as the guy that they would like to hire. And part of the reasoning there was that if it didn't work out with JJ, they could pass some of the blame off to LeBron, and Lakers fans, just like they did with Russell Westbrook, would just assume, well, they hired him for LeBron, and if it didn't work out, that's LeBron's problem. LeBron's going to retire in a couple of years anyway, and Rob Pelinka is safe to make his next hire after that. And then in their conversations with JJ, like you're talking about, told him he can't do anything until after the finals. And from what I've heard, the Lakers weren't thrilled about that. And we're hoping that, like, okay, you can't do anything officially, but can we come to some kind of like handshake agreement so that we know what's going on here? and move on there. And that's like what you're talking about. That seems to be the sense, is that like they had zeroed in. That's the term that I used, and then and it came back. I think Shams used it again about a week later, and so they basically zeroed in and honed in on JJ. But somewhere along there too, LeBron distanced himself from JJ, and I found the noise to change very particularly in that moment where I think Pelinka realized, crap, he outflanked us. He if I hire JJ, I am actually going to have to face accountability if it doesn't work out. And in waiting for the finals to play out, I think Woj reached out to, whatever train of events or line of events that got us to Hurley and the Lakers picking their conversation back up. You had all of that play out. But what was really interesting, Ethan, is that like Hurley leaked the offer that he was expecting. John Fanta reported that like the Lakers were going to offer him a contract for $100 million. I heard that, and I reached out to my Lakers people and I asked, that's a lot of money. You haven't done that before. Is that something that you guys could actually see the Buses doing here? And the response I got there was a hesitant yes. Like, if that's what he wants, we really, really need the guy. Maybe we could see that playing out that way. So that's why I said that that the Lakers were prepared to make an offer in the ballpark of 8 years, $100 million. And then we come to find out that the offer is only 6 years, $70 million. I say only for the sake of the context of the situation that we have here. So if the Lakers didn't, like, they knew the number that he was looking for, they came in well below the number in terms of years and total value on the contract. That kind of symbolizes that they weren't as in on Hurley as maybe we think. And like do you think that maybe the person who wanted Hurley to the Lakers most here is Woj?
Oh yeah. I think that's clear. And I mean, when you're talking about how this was a chance of a lifetime, I mean, when that's the deal,
regret it potentially. He could win a three-peat. He might regret taking the Lakers job
for the rest of his days. If I had only taken that Laker job when LeBron's going to be 40 years old,
a modern Wooden, he's like, man, what about I could have coached LeBron's last 2 years.
Oh, that would have been incredible if only I had done that. My life sucks now. It's terrible because of that. Yeah, that seems to be the case. Now where it just gets a little fuzzy, and now we get into the Laker part of it, which is the Lakers are a pretty chaotic organization.
Yes.
And they're a pretty chaotic organization because there are a lot of cooks in that kitchen. I'm sure you have some experience with it. They've got a lot of cooks in that kitchen, and it's hard to know who wants to do what. And I don't think Jeannie is a strong leader. And so you're kind of just liable to the whims of whoever takes the steering wheel that day. And maybe it's Linda Rambis saying, I don't know about JJ Redick, but maybe Pelinka convinces Linda, no, Redick, we like Redick. And it's chaotic, which is, I think, why they got used in this.
I've heard about that specific scenario. Yeah. That at some point the Lakers cooled on Redick, and I've heard that the driving force to that was Linda.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard similar, and I don't think it's quite what Shams was saying, where it's always been Redick, because they did fly. Then you got to start asking Shams, why did they fly Hurley cross country, right? You know, what's going on here? And now one theory is that it's a Rob Pelinka smoke bomb that, look, we're going to, JJ, you don't want to be a distraction during the finals. We're going to make this Hurley thing happen. Which, by the way, if that's the case, that's a crazy thing to do. That's not a good idea. That's not a smart scheme. This again is why they're this again is like the Coen Brothers movie thing, where we're gonna do a fake kidnapping of Hurley and it's gonna work out for us somehow. There's just so much going on here, and I do think a lot of it is a reflection of the dysfunction within the Lakers currently and ESPN currently. And the two are combining to create this absolute madness. And I don't get it from Pelinka's perspective, by the way. I wouldn't want Redick if I was Pelinka. So that's the other part that's interesting. I don't,
Mhm.
if I am Pelinka and I'm hiring a coach and I've got this sort of ability to ingratiate myself with Jeannie and with Linda and everything else, I don't want a guy who's a podcaster who, if this doesn't work out, is going to go on podcasts and talk all bad about me. I think that's an interesting aspect that's been underexplored, which is that Redick kind of has this ability to have his own platform, and the platform can be power. And if you want power within the Lakers, do you want somebody who has more power than the average coach? So I don't get it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that one out there.
Yeah, I've thought about some of that. I actually thought of it more from the perspective of the kind of turf war that has gone on between Clutch and the Lakers over the years, where if Redick is hired, that is seen as an extension of LeBron. And I thought that when the Lakers somewhat cooled on Redick, I thought that, like, my theory was that they kind of realized, oof, this is a big LeBron ally. Maybe we should cool the jets here, because to this point, because of how things played out with Russell Westbrook, that turf war had basically been resolved. Like, that was over. Pelinka won, and Clutch went from, having a hand in the acquisition of a $47 million Russell Westbrook to, hey, maybe we can get Cam Reddish on the minimum. Can we maybe? And so as that has all kind of played out, that kind of dawned on me while this was playing out. But yeah, what this kind of reminds me of, because I think it'll probably be Redick. I still, like, for some reason, Borrego has found a way to, like, ingratiate himself and be a part of this process.
Interesting tidbit about Borrego, same agent as Dan Hurley. So that's just, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
All this Borrego buzz out there is interesting. Like, why Borrego? I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but all of a sudden Borrego's name is out there and everybody wants a Borrego. And okay, I mean, it's just odd. It's just odd. It's very interesting.
It was weird. It has been weird to hear from time to time that Borrego could basically use the Lakers and Cavs to negotiate against each other. When, again, it's James Borrego. Like, no shaded James Borrego, but it's James Borrego. But yeah, I thought that with the JJ thing, I had heard that he had cooled on the Lakers by way of the conversations that he had and how it played out with Hurley, and that they could pick up the conversation again, and it appears obviously that they did. But what this strikes me of is kind of a lot like the LaMarcus Aldridge free agency thing. Do you remember that from a few years back?
Oh my God, what a deep cut.
Where the Lakers, flubbed their free agency pitch so bad that they actually asked him to come back and try it again. And look, I'm here to say this isn't his first interview with the Lakers. I've heard that he's had meetings even beyond the conversations that he had in Chicago at the draft combine or whatever, that, like, the conversation has extended beyond those things. And, to bring him back now for what Woj is calling his first formal interview, I don't believe that. It's been a month. It just kind of strikes me as, all right, we'll try this again. Let's try this again. Let's give it another go. Let's see how this goes.
Can we? I mean, this is the craziest aspect of the newsbreakers, where they try to sell us on this new reality where they were always right. This has happened multiple times. It happened when Woj botched. It happened when Woj botched the Harden trade with the Nets and the Sixers, which he botches some of the biggest stories, by the way. I know we're coming off as haters, but it's just true. I feel like, obviously, he is the most connected guy, but those connections lead him often to try to influence conversation and throw cold water on something his source wants cold water thrown on. And you get these sorts of situations, and it becomes, well, I wasn't wrong about Redick. They just started talking to Redick. Really? It's just, like, really? Are you serious? Well, I mean, why even try? Like, it's ridiculous.
When I try to talk about the sourcing that I have, I always use the disclaimer of, as of right now, as of 12:28 Central Time, 10:28 West Coast time. This is the information that I have in front of me, because the thing is, these are all evolving stories. These are all developing stories. And the idea that like you have to, because that's basically what it feels like right now, is that Woj overextended himself trying to play matchmaker. And now he's trying to tell a version of the story that makes it look like he has never been wrong, when reality is he had it wrong. Like, it's fine.
And by the way, you can do that when you're reporting on the Nets. But part of what's happened here, I think, is that, and I'm giving a compliment to all you people in this chat and people who enjoy this show, the Lakers actually matter, and their fans are crazy, and they're observing everything. And so you can't just make your own reality. Things get noticed, things get remembered. And this is an instance of that, where I do think he overextended himself, and he did so in a world where it matters, and it's tracked, and it's remembered. And in this instance, people can tell that this was a lot of BS, and you can't just pretend it away. Or maybe you can, because the other funny aspect of it is that media members are so scared. Everybody should be howling with laughter today across NBA media.
I think everybody is.
But you don't see it on
quietly.
Twitter. You don't see it. Isn't that funny? Isn't that interesting? I mean, if the UConn beat reporter had screwed this story up, would we not be howling with laughter about it? But instead, it's just everybody quietly chuckling to each other. And maybe that's the real power. The real power isn't breaking the news. It's the ability to screw something up like this to this degree, in this embarrassing a fashion, and have nobody point and laugh at you publicly. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think given the amount that we whether it's journalists or bloggers or podcasts or whatever, how much we talk to each other, the type of like reverential silence that we have when Wojo's name comes up, because that's the thing here, is that like
it's branding.
There are examples of him wielding hiring and firing power. Right. And so like there's a lot of people where if Woj comes up, people just back away from the table and they say, I don't need to put my career on the line to tell a joke on Twitter. And maybe I needed to learn that lesson too. But like it is like, this is the kind of thing where everybody, like you're saying, everybody here, I've received, I don't know how many DMs and texts and stuff like that from other people who cover the NBA, who are all saying like, funny. You know, we're all doing it to each other, but nobody's going to tweet about it.
Yeah, the Dan Hurley Fugazi, pretty funny, pretty amusing to see this all go down in this. I mean, this completely overshadowed the NBA Finals and how they were talking about it. This whole thing that did not happen, this Godfather offer that never materialized. That's the weirdest part of it. I mean, if they had given him $100 million, then we're talking about that's a different story, right? Because that seems serious. But instead it was this DOA offer. And I think that a lot of it has to do with ego and this weird jealous rivalry between him and Shams that we're seeing play out. This teacher and student rivalry where they used to work together, and Woj said he would be the next great newsbreaker, and now they hate each other. And that's also part of this whole drama and this whole saga.
Yep. Well, Ethan, I have taken up too much of your time. I greatly appreciate you hopping on, especially on short notice. I really do hope people check out that piece. You also wrote a piece a couple of years ago about the Lakers and about how they operate there. I think I'll put that in the chat here and in the iTunes description as well, because I think that's also great background information on this all as well. Is there anything that you want to plug before we get you out of here?
No, just House of Strauss is my Substack. House of Strauss is my YouTube channel where I also do videos on there. It's independent media. It's powered by the people, and it allows me perhaps more honesty on some of these issues. I'm not saying I'm a better reporter than other people out there, but it's just the nature of the thing. When you don't have an institution, you can say some stuff that other people can't say because you've got the customer support. So that's what I do, and I appreciate you talking to me about it. This has been fun.
I've been pulling for that publication to work, and I've been pulling for that model to work because of that freedom and because what it means in an industry that we talked about it. People are like, people won't tweet and laugh about this because they're concerned for their careers. I've been
insane.
rooting for you, and I'm really happy to see how well it's all played out for you, man. It's awesome to watch.
Thanks so much, Anthony.
All right, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge and this week's episodes of the Lakers Lounge. I'm heading out on vacation. I'm taking my mic and I'm taking all my crap with me just in case the Lakers do Friday news dump the hiring of their next head coach. So maybe you guys will hear from me tomorrow. I'll probably be in some swim trunks in the Gulf of Mexico, but we'll see how that plays out. Ethan, have a great rest of your day and weekend, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
I just want real quick. It'd be really funny if the call of the Celtics winning, that's when JJ just drops it like, "Oh, the Celtics, not since 2009 or the champions," Breen says, and Redick leans into the mic and goes, "And I'm the Lakers coach now. Bye." And that's how this all. He's done with his responsibilities, like you going on vacation. All right, thanks, Anthony.